Similar to the last one, we're now going to work with our secondary trig function. So primaries are sine, cosine, tangent. The reciprocals, or the secondary trigonometric functions, are going to be cosecant, secant, and cotangent. On the left-hand side, you have 20 seconds to write down everything you know about secant functions. So I know that secant and cosine are reciprocals of one another. So secant is equivalent to 1 over cosine, and likewise cosine is equivalent to 1 over the secant. You have 4 steps, just like all periodic functions, in order to complete one cycle. In order to figure out the period length, we're going to take 2 pi and divide it by the b. So our b value is going to be 1 here. It's hiding in front. That gives us 2 pi, and 4 pi all the way over here is going to be negative 2 pi. So if I do 2 cycles to the right, I'll end in 4 pi. And if I do 1 cycle to the left, I'll end in negative 2 pi. Now, just like in the previous example we did with cosecant, I'm going to take 2 pi and divide it by 4 because there's 4 steps to the cycle. So when I take 2 pi and I take 2 pi divided by 4, I end up with 1 pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 4, and so on. Now it's time to come up with the outputs. Each one of these points will be our input. So I'm going to make a little table off to the right-hand side. This is going to be my input value, and this is going to be my output value. That's how functions work. So I'm going to start with 0. So at 0, I want to know, well, let's go to 0, and we know the relationship between cosine and secant. So cosine is going to be our first value. So cosine here, 1 divided by 1. Now what's the reciprocal of 1 divided by 1? It's simply 1. So I'm going to go up to 1 and make my dot. 1 pi over 2. 1 pi over 2. Let's figure out what the cosine is. The cosine is 0 over 1. If I take the reciprocal, it's 1 over 0, which is undefined. Let's move on to pi. At pi, I'm searching out for what is the cosine. Good morning, Jerry Bear. It's negative 1 over 1. What's the reciprocal of negative 1 over 1? It's 1 over negative 1, or negative 1. 2 steps remaining, and then we can just continue the pattern. At 3 pi over 4, again, I'm searching for, 3 pi over 2. I'm searching for what is the cosine. It's 0 over 1, but I want the reciprocal for secant. 1 over 0, or undefined. And at 2 pi, as we complete the 4th and final step, I have 1 over 1 for the cosine. The reciprocal is simply 1 over 1, or 1. So I could continue for cycle 2 by following a pattern. I'm going to drop back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's undefined. I'm going to drop back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's negative 1 is the output. I'm going to drop back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's undefined. I'm going to drop back 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's positive 1. And now I'll do the exact same thing over here. Now, this is great. I followed the pattern, but how is that going to help me create a shape? And I want to make sure that's definitely going in the right direction. So I'm asking myself what's directly in between 0 and pi over 2, right there. So I come up to my unit circle. What's directly in between 0 and pi over 2 is pi over 4. So I'm going to focus in on what is the cosine, because I know that cosine and secant are related, they're reciprocals, which means if I take this value and if I take the reciprocal of it, which is 2 divided by the square root of 2, and if we remember from our last video, we end up with a 1.4. Okay, so this is going to be right here is going to be 1.4. Now, if I go between pi over 2 and pi, between pi over 2 and pi over 2 and pi, okay, there we go, but I'm looking at the cosine, and if I take the reciprocal, I still get 2 over radical 2, which would be 1.4, but it's a negative 1.4. So in this position right here, it'd be negative 1.4. Here's negative 1, here's negative 2, so negative 1.4 is right here. And this gives me, based on my knowledge, an idea of how this is working.